Hello everyone. Welcome to those who haven't been here before, and welcome back to those who have watched before. Thanks for coming again. My name is Leah Langley, and as you can tell from the title of this video, I will be discussing the books I read in June 2024. Now I know I'm coming out this video a little later than I would have liked, but it's been quite a busy July for me, but I'm happy to talk about the 4 books I read in June 2024. Actually, in June, I surpassed my reading goal. I might have said before, every year, or for the past couple of years, I've been putting my reading goal, it's just my age that I'm turning that year, pretty low bar. I usually at least double it, if not more, every year. But it's kind of just like a low bar to do, like not too much stress about it, but something that's attainable for me, and I always encourage people to do that. So I was able to do that this month, and let's not waste time. Let's get right into my first book. Oh, before we actually get into that, I say this a lot of times, but in my description every time in all my videos, I have my Goodreads linked below. If you follow my Goodreads, you can see the books I'm reading as I'm doing them. You can see my reviews. I don't have to wait for these videos if you don't want to. I pretty much honestly go off a lot of things I say in my Goodreads reviews, because my reviews are very much kind of like just like my ideas in the book. But if you want to follow along there, don't want to have to wait around for them, you can follow me on Goodreads. But if these videos are good for you too, then that's fine. All right, now into the books. And the very first book I read in June was The Age of Magical Overthinking, Notes on Modern Irrationality by Amanda Montell. Before I really give my full thoughts on it, I'm going to kind of read a quick synopsis about it. Utilizing the linguistic insights of her witty and brilliant first book, Word Slut, and the sociological explorations of her breakout hit Cultish, Amanda Montell now turns her erudite eye to the inner workings of the human mind and its biases in her most personal and electrifying work yet. Magical thinking can be broadly defined as the belief that one's internal thoughts can affect unrelated events in the external. Think of the conviction that one can manifest the way out of poverty, stave off cancer with positive vibes, thwart the apocalypse by learning how to can their own peaches, or transform an unhealthy relationship to a glorious one with loyalty alone. In all of its forms, magical thinking works in service of restoring agency amid chaos, but in the age of magical overthinking, Montell argues that the modern information age, our brain's coping mechanisms have been overloaded and our irrationality turned up to an 11. In a series of razor-sharp, deeply funny chapters, Montell delves into the cornucopia of the cognitive biases that run rampant in our brains, from how the halo effect cultivates worship and hatred of the larger-than-life celebrities, to the sunk cost fallacy can keep us in detrimental relationships long after we realize that they're not serving us. As she illuminates these concepts with her signature brilliance and wit, Montell's prevailing message is one of hope, empathy, and ultimately forgiveness for our anxiety-addled human selves. If you have at all lost faith in our ability to reason, Montell aims to make some sense of the senseless, to crack open a window in our minds and to let a warm breeze in, to help quiet the cacophony for a while, or even hear a melody from it. So this is a book, I think I saw this book on someone's Instagram or something like that, and I said, oh, the title looks interesting. For me, what immediately caught my eye and my attention was magical thinking. Magical overthinking is what this book, but magical thinking and that whole concept. Many of you potentially might have read Joan Didion's wonderful work, The Year of Magical Thinking, and Montell does reference that book in here. Kind of talking about that was kind of like her initial thinking about it, and she kind of, was talking about different things here. As you can see by my rating, you see it should be here. I didn't love this book, really not much at all. I was going to give you my thoughts on it. I don't remember why I picked up this book, as I said. I forgot I was even in my digital library account until it notified me that it would be returned soon. I should say it's a pretty short book, so it was one of those, I get pretty much most of my books through Libby unless I buy them myself. And it was saying, oh, we're going to return in a couple of days. I was like, oh, what is this book? I forgot I even had it, but anyways. But somehow, somewhere, I had heard about it and decided to read it. I think what first piqued my interest is kind of what I said about the whole Year of Magical Thinking from Joan Didion, which Montell references in this book. While it's clear those books would not be similar, the magical thinking thus overthinking got me to pick up the book, as I said. I had no idea what type of book this would be. I didn't read any synopses or on anything before. I also will say I never read, I know in that little review, that little montage I gave, they talked about 2 of Montell's past books, Cultish and Word Slut. Never read any of those, never heard of any of those, so I don't really know this author. I just, again, the title kind of grabbed me and had me pick it up to read it. The title and subtitle were all I had to go on. It was just a let's give it a go type of read. That I said, I liked the first 3 to 4 chapters, maybe the first 2 to 3, And I liked them because I was still naive to what the book would be like, and after getting through those, I realized the following 100 plus pages were gonna go, and I really didn't enjoy it from there or really care for it. I can see why some people would like this book, especially people who are used to this author or fans of other books like this, but it's just not for me, and I would have likely known that going in if I had read a synopsis on it before beginning it. Even though I see why people may like this book, I think Montel set out to give and say a lot here, but in the end, a lot was said, but not a lot was given. Again, I will say, I read this book, I logged this book as read it on June 4th, so it's been quite some time since I've read it, but I do remember kind of when I sit there, I liked the beginning of it, and I was still trying to figure out, like, okay, well, how's this book going to go? What's happening here? And it was kind of quickly, I was like, okay, this is one of those books. And also, there's nothing's wrong with books that are kind of written in the same vein, but I just didn't think it was done very well. I don't think it was really saying very much at all. I felt like it was trying to say a lot, or thought it was saying a lot, but it really was not. At least for me, that's my personal experience. There's some mixed reviews on Goodreads and other places as well, and it could be, like I said, she had 2 popular books before, so it could be people coming in from that. But for me, it was not my cup of tea, but I kind of have a rule where if I pick up a book, I try to finish it. I haven't put down a book since I think I started reading War and Peace a couple years ago, and I said I'm going to hold that for a little later. But pretty much I try to read all the way through. So it's one of those, like, we're stuck with it. We're going to keep going. So 2 out of 5 for me. Would not read again. Would not even recommend, honestly. But hey, if you happen to stumble upon it and you read it, then go ahead. I'd much rather you read Your Magical Thinking by Joan Didion, which again has nothing to do with this book really, other than the whole magical overthinking thinking situation. But yeah, so that's what drew me in, and that's what ultimately was just like, nah. So we move on. The next book I read was Funny Story by Emily Henry. Now, Emily Henry, I've read, I believe it's been her past 5 books. It's been People We Meet on Vacation, Beach Read, Book Lovers, Happy Place, and this would have been the 5th book of hers I've read. And I really like her books. Book Lovers, out of those, is my favorite, I think. I think I have Book Lovers right behind me. So this book came out in April, and I grabbed it right away, hoping to get it. Finally got it and read it, and I was really happy to read it. Let me give you a little synopsis. Let me read you a quick synopsis on Funny Story. Daphne always loved the way her fiancé Peter told their story, how they met, fell in love, and moved back to his lakeside hometown to begin their life together. He really was good at telling it, right up until the moment he realized he was actually in love with his childhood best friend, Petra. Which is how Daphne begins her new story, stranded in beautiful Warning Bay, Michigan, without friends or family, but with the dream job as a children's librarian, and proposing to be roommates with the only person who could possibly understand her predicament, Petra's ex, Miles. Scruffy and chaotic with a penchant for taking solace in the sounds of heartbreak love ballads, Miles is exactly the opposite of practical, buttoned-up Daphne, whose coworkers know so little about her that they have a running bet that she's either the FBI or in witness protection. The roommates mainly avoid one another until one day, while drowning their sorrows, they form a tenuous friendship and a plan, if said plan also involves posting deliberately misleading photos of their summer adventures together. Well, who could blame them? But it's all just for show, of course, because there's no way Daphne would actually start her new chapter by falling in love with ex-fiance's new fiance, right? So this is the premise. Essentially, 2 scorned lovers end up living together because it's just like out of convenience, and they become friends, and as Emily Henry's romance novels do, it kind of follows the traditional pathway of, we're friends or we're enemies, whatever, and eventually we're going to come together. That's just really how it continues to go, and every book of hers has kind of been a different problem. That's how it is for a lot of romance books, honestly. I don't have a lot to say about this one, and I'm really looking for my review now. I thought it was fine. I didn't connect to it or the characters as much as I thought I would have, or as much as I have in other Emily Henry books. Like I said, Book Lovers is one of my favorite ones of hers, and Happy Place I also enjoyed, which is her last one too. And I don't know, this one, it didn't, maybe it was because I knew it was going to happen, but I don't even think it was the way that. I feel like it just wasn't something I really was like into, like the way I have been in other books of hers, and I was really undisappointed because I was really looking forward to reading this one from her. So for Daphne and Miles, they're exes and now with each other, and they end up living together. They're both dealing with the sudden end of their relationships, and they're both dealing through their own past problems. And you can kind of see, like I said, you see what's going next. But for me, the book was pretty bland and forgettable, which hurts me to say. But that's just really what I thought about it. 3 out of 5. Like I said, I don't really have much more to say. I think if you like romance novels, pick it up. I still recommend Emily Henry to a lot of people. I think I've enjoyed her books, and I'm so happy I read this book, because I'm going to probably continue to read any book she comes out with, just because we're in it for the long haul now. But that's just how I felt about it personally, and yeah, so people might like it a lot more than me, and that's fine. Love that for you. Okay, next up on our book list is Small Island by Andrea Levy. Quick, right, with the synopsis. Hortense Joseph lives in London from Jamaica in 1948. With her life in her suitcase, her heart broken, her resolve intact, her husband Gilbert Joseph returns from the war, expecting to be received as a hero, but finds his status as a black man in Britain to be second class. His white landlady, Queenie, raised as a farmer's daughter, befriends Gilbert and later Hortense with innocence and courage until the unexpected arrival of her husband, Bernard, who returns from combat with issues of his own to resolve. Told in these four voices, Small Island is a courageous novel of tender emotion and sparkling wit, of crossings taken and passages lost, of shattering compassion and of reckless optimism in the face of insurmountable barriers. In short, an encapsulation of the most American of experiences, the immigrant's life. So this book was a book that one of our book club members picked for us to read. As I said before, I have a book club. The person who picked it is actually, she's a book club member of ours who lives in the UK. She's dating my cousin. And this is a book very popular in the UK, so we were happy to read it. And honestly, as you can see on this side, I gave it 4 to 5 stars. I think it was very, very good. Let me just say my connection to it that I felt first off. So I was thinking about this book a lot when I was reading it, and also in the book club discussion, I was thinking a lot about my great-grandmother who was from Jamaica but came to England in the Windrush generation. And I was kind of thinking about her, and I was in the book club of some of my relatives as well, and they reflected that as well, thinking about our great-grandmother and kind of what she maybe had to go through. She went there. My great-grandfather stayed in Jamaica, and she was in England and was there for a good long while. So kind of thinking about like what that would be like to be someone to be going over there at that time to try to get a better life for yourself, to kind of do all these things, but kind of was what Gilbert was doing and eventually what Hortense did, moving. And this is the same time that Andrea Levy, the author's parents, moved to the UK. They came during the Windrush generation, as many people's families did. So yeah, that was kind of my first connection to it, and kind of just like, wow, like this is really, making me think of things that I wish I could speak to her about. But I like this book. Like I said, I think this book is excellent. It follows and is narrated by the four voices I mentioned: Hortense, Gilbert, Queenie, and Bernard. Obviously, two Jamaicans who are living in England now, and then two white people who are living in England, and them kind of like their lives kind of coming together, and us kind of going back and forth between their ideas. They're very moving, very funny, surprising, and engaging, heartfelt book, and overall I just recommend to everybody, especially those who I think who can relate to the subject matter or have similar things in their lives potentially. It's one of those books that's really just like, kind of like I said in the synopsis, is really kind of about an immigrant's life. As much as we're kind of hearing from Queenie and Bernard, Hortense for me is really like she's like the first person we meet and we kind of are following along with, and we're kind of just seeing like the differences between them wanting to come to their mother country, and back then especially England was or the UK in general was very much like the mother country and very much like the country we're proud to be a part of and we're a part of, all that kind of stuff. Now it's changed to a level, but kind of wanting to get there and do what you can, and maybe leaving behind a really good life in Jamaica, but hoping to get an even better life in England, and all those things are kind of wrapped up in there, and also just like so many things. I think it was really, really good, and I'm happy we got to read it for the book club. There also was the TV show, but it kind of feels like almost like one of those mini movies. It was on BBC. I've watched one of the two so far. Each of the two are about an hour and a half, but starring in it is David Oyelowo, Benedict Cumberbatch, Naomi Harris, and then let me look her up, the one other woman in the book who's playing Queenie is Ruth Wilson. So when I saw that it was a TV show, I was like, oh, I know all these names. I didn't know Ruth Wilson's name off the top of my head, but I was like, oh wow, and this TV show came out a while ago. This book came out a couple years ago too. So I started watching the TV show, and I will finish it hopefully soon. But definitely a good book I'd recommend to people. I actually think I might read it again because I was trying to hurry up to read it before the book club, so I kind of rushed through the end quicker than I really wanted to. So I might actually flip through it again and just pick up some more things, highlight some more of that kind of stuff. But Very, very good book. I really, really enjoyed it. Next up, we have Queen of Our Times, and this book is by Robert Hardman. This book, if you were to watch my last two books I read, I had a book in the back, I think on maybe each of those, that was just this big book that I think I mentioned before, this big biography that I picked up, and it took me a while to read it. I was kind of like reading other things. I was kind of just like, I wouldn't say bored with it at sometimes, but I just was like, it's there. I have it from the library. I kept extending it, and I finally got through it in June. And let us talk about it. So this book, first of all, is interesting. I thought about reading a book on Queen Elizabeth II, like a biography. Never got around to it, but I was in the library one day a couple months ago now, and I saw this book kind of sticking out, and I was like, oh, awesome. I picked it up, and I also saw that it came out, I believe, in like March or April 2022, and if you don't know, Queen Elizabeth died in September, so it was very much like, oh wow, this book came out like kind of right before she passed. So it'll be interesting to see that kind of, a nice proper biography on her to kind of see, and obviously not knowing she would die a couple months later. But anyway, so let me just read the synopsis on it first, and here we go. Shy but with a steely confidence, indestructible despite 10 decades in the public eye, unflappable, devout, indulgent, outwardly reserved, inwardly passionate, unsentimental, inquisitive, young at heart. Even with her recent passing at age 96, so obviously this is something that was written after, she remains a 21st century global phenomenon commanding the unrivaled respect and affection. Sealed off during the greatest peacetime emergency of modern times, she has stuck to her own. I have been seen to be believed. Robert Hardman, one of Britain's most acclaimed royal biographers, now wraps up the full story of one of the undisputed greats in 1,000 years of monarchy. Hardman distills Elizabeth's complex life into a must-read study of dynamic survival and renewal. Is a portrait of a world leader who remains as intriguing today as she did when she came to the throne when she was 25. With peerless access to the members of the royal family, staff, friends, and loyal friends, Queen of Our Times brings fresh insights and scholarships to the modern royal story. There will be no more thorough, more readable, more original on Elizabeth II as we celebrate the life and reign that surely will never be equaled. So like I said, I wanted to read a book on Queen Elizabeth II anyway. She's someone who have had interest in, and obviously she's or was the queen of one of my countries. So just some interest there, obviously. I gave it a good rating. I thought it was very well done. I will agree with that last kind of bit of that little synopsis there. It's a very readable, very digestible book. Very thorough, I felt like, to some length. But let me kind of just talk about a little bit some of the problems I have with this book. So this is the first biography I've read on any member of the British royal family. And I've always regarded her life as extraordinary, and I had no hesitation in picking it up when I saw it. And like I said, I was more intrigued when I saw it was published just a couple months before, and just 1 month after her Platinum Jubilee, which was her 70th year mark on the throne. Fabulous for Her Majesty. I remember we celebrated that in February. But I'm actually going to just read what I wrote, because I remember I wrote this as I was reading the book midway through, and I feel like what I said is probably like what I feel, and I don't want to regurgitate and maybe say it or miss it wrong. So I'm going to just read what I wrote, and then we'll talk about it a little bit after. Alright, so I did not, and still do not in many respects, know who author Robert Hardman is. Obviously from what I just read above, he's a royal biographer, but I didn't know this at the time. Still, I know that royal reporters / biographers often write a series of works on several royal family members. I was not surprised to see the same was true for him when I looked up his works when I was about 20% through the book. I decided to look him up after the series of mentions of the acclaimed series The Crown, which I am / was a fan of, but I have not taken Peter Morgan, who's the creator of The Crown, word as vow as no one should. I thought, wow, how many more times is he going to mention The Crown? Clearly, he is trying to reshape the narrative that is out there and is above all regards this family in the highest of favors and doesn't want spins, claims, and hyperbole out there, which is fine, but also that's a television series and this is a biography, so can we focus on the subject of the text? I get there have always been detractors of The Crown and thinking of the upcoming subjects of the series that would eventually come out in November, which was season 5 at the time, which was the kind of the Diana and Charles season to some capacity. I remember there's a lot of, again, we'll talk about it later. I get why someone would want to lend their voice to disparage the show and its portrayals, but as I said before, that's a television series, and though it may affect people's thoughts on the royal family, is a biography the place to remark on the series continually? I think not. I'm writing this midway through chapter 6. I have a lot of book left, and I would not be surprised if there are several more references and inaccuracies in The Crown. Now that I have this backing on Hartman and see where he is coming from, I'm expecting a generally picturesque picture of him, of HM. I put Her Majesty and the family as a whole. I'm already seeing some of that as Hartman currently taking us through the 50s and mid 60s, which is fine. I didn't pick up the book to read a critique of Her Majesty, but I just want to state that about this biography. So I wrote some more after I finished the book, but I wrote that as I was in the beginning stages of the book because I was in a period where he mentioned the crown so many times. I'd turn the page and it'd be the crown, the crown, the crown. And I was remembering in 2022, as I mentioned, season 5 was coming out soon. It came out in November, and that was the season people were already getting ready, like, oh my gosh, like they're going to talk about Charles and Diana, and it's going to be all this stuff, and yada, yada, yada. And obviously, they want to protect Charles because even though Her Majesty wasn't dead at that point, we know he's going to be the next king. So obviously, protect him. We don't want to dredge up old stuff. People are already still upset about Diana stuff and other things, whatever. And also, even just before then, there's been so many things about the crown and how it's not true life and stuff like that, which I don't think, some people have said there should be a disclaimer at the beginning of shows like that, like, all this is fictional, yada yada, and we're just, going off what we think. But kind of obviously, I don't know who watches a show like The Crown or other shows like that and it says, this is exactly what happened. We were in the room when Queen Elizabeth was saying yada 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 to whoever. Like, no, you should kind of know that this is like an interpretation. And I was like annoying. I was like, can we stop talking about the crown? I'm trying to talk about what the Queen was doing in Kenya in the 60s or whatever. You know what I mean? It was just too much. It was too much going on. And then when I looked up Hardman, I was like, okay, so he's actually a royal biographer, which I should have known, but like, he's one who's been there for a long time. So he obviously has an affinity for the royals. He obviously is going to write the royals in a certain type of light and want to, like, again, not have a bunch of spins and stuff from the crown be in people's minds. Because I do believe that to some capacity, some people they've learned a lot through the crown as the family, I should say, rather than maybe doing their own research. But still, I hope that people don't go around thinking that the crown, like I said, that the crown or Peter Morgan's word is vow. Like, that should not be the way. And let me read what I wrote after I finished the book. So I finished, and the previous paragraph is really how it turned out. Very picturesque. We cover the Queen's life from birth until the publication date, which again was just a few months before she passed. So it really is a full biography. However, as suspected, after several references to the crown in the early chapters of the book, which more came but far fewer than those first six chapters, you could tell that the author was not out to ruffle any feathers and was just trying to quickly move on or frame things in a certain way to avoid any more or new criticism of Her Majesty and her family. Again, that's fine. As stated before, this is someone who has certain access to the royal family, so it's understandable not wanting to jeopardize that. Overall, I'm happy I read it as I learned several things I did not know. I think any account of Elizabeth's life is well worth reading, as she is quite the figure. Biographies of people like her are needed because she surely was not going to pen one herself. So this is one of those ones where we have. This is what we have, really. Besides the softballs, it's a good and comprehensive biography. So I did feel like at some points in the book, as I kind of mentioned there, were kind of like maybe some of the stickier times were kind of scooted over, or like the criticisms that were at the time were kind of like not mentioned, or it was like, let's just look at the view of this way. And that's natural. Some things that, we've known have happened, and it's kind of just been like, let's just like, oh, let's frame it this way. We couldn't get that because, and again, that's okay. I didn't pick up the book because I wanted to read some harsh critique of Her Majesty, and I'm not like a big monarchist or anything like that. I've grown up to, my father's English, my family's English, so I've grown up to know about them and respect them and whatever, but I'm not really one way or the other necessarily. I mean, I think they're fine. I will watch the weddings, I would do all that stuff, but I wasn't trying to read a book to, really harp on Her Majesty or really anything like that. I really just wanted to get a good biography of her, read about some of the stuff she'd done that I hadn't known. Like I said, I did learn a lot from it, so I'm happy I did it. It took me a while to get through it. I kind of was just like doing other stuff like I said, but overall it was a good biography. But I do think it was good that I knew early on, like, okay, this is a biographer who was like, he's probably going to be coming at this in a certain angle. He's not going to be writing like, it's going to be picturesque, like I said, and it really certainly was. But like I said, I gave it which way in my hands? I gave it a 4 out of 5. Really good book. If you want to read a good biography on Queen Elizabeth, I'd recommend this one. Like I said, it really is all the way up into the final months of her life, which we didn't know at the time, but it was all the way up till then. So really a full picture of almost 100-year life and 70-year reign. So really good. So that is it. Those are the 4 books I read in June 2024. A good mix, 2 novels, 1 biography, 1 self-help. I don't even know what kind of book it was, but those are the books I read. We got through them. We look forward to July. As I'm filming this, and as you're watching this, July is almost done. So I will be back quite soon with the next set of books I read in July 2024. But thank you so much for watching. As always, like I said before, if you want to follow me on Goodreads to keep up with what I'm doing on the books front, do that. All my other social stuff like that are down below. So go ahead and check those out. Thank you as always for watching the videos and for supporting. I will see you guys soon, like I said, for the July books and for whatever else we come out with. So have a great one, everyone. Bye-bye.